Howdy folks, I'm Ben Starr, the ultimate food geek. Welcome to my messy kitchen, and today I am here to liberate you from horrible homemade hummus. Now, if you are the kind of person that's like, quick, get to the recipe, I don't have time, get the hell off my YouTube channel. At the Food Geek, my purpose here is to teach you the science behind cooking techniques, to empower you with the knowledge to spend less time searching the internet for perfect recipes and more time creating perfect recipes on your own. Now, hummus. This is a very, very interesting substance that was virtually unknown in the United States 20 years ago. I first encountered it in my early 20s, around that time, in my travels in the Middle East, and really fell in love with it. I thought it was just utterly delicious. Brought it back to my kitchen in Texas and tried to share it with friends and family, but it never really caught on. Nobody seemed particularly interested in this lovely, delicious paste of garbanzo beans and sesame seeds that I was offering them. But of course, I was actually producing hummus the way that I had tasted it in Egypt and Jordan and Israel, which had more of like a hand-pounded texture, very kind of coarse. This is the texture that I grew to love because it's the first way I encountered hummus, but American palate isn't really particularly tolerant of those weird, coarsely textured pastes. Unfortunately, when you make hummus at home, this is the texture you so often end up with. It's really hard, it seems, to achieve that perfectly creamy, smooth texture that you get from the hummus that's available in the supermarkets. Now, hummus has been made since, well, scholars think that it was invented in Egypt during ancient times, and it's consumed all over the Middle East and the Mediterranean basin. But it really wasn't until Sabra hummus, which produces the majority of hummus consumed in the United States, started introducing this perfectly creamy textured hummus that you can get in pretty much any grocery store anywhere in the country, that people really developed a flavor for it. And it's a good thing that we did because, you know, a really good, delicious, creamy hummus feels almost indulgent as eating like queso or onion dip, right? But instead of being, you know, chock full of saturated fat and cholesterol, we have this product that is heart healthy, made predominantly from beans and seeds that have really heart-healthy oils, and it's high in protein and complex carbohydrates. It's really good for you, so it's sort of a guilt-free indulgence. And today I am going to teach you how to avoid that nasty, lumpy texture you get at home. You can even achieve a texture that is significantly superior to the Sabra hummuses and the other commercial hummuses that you find in the grocery store if you will follow my instructions. Now, I think if you've probably been after this texture, you've read all sorts of untruths and myths all around the internet. The most common one I see is that after you cook your chickpeas, you must remove the skins from each individual chickpea in order to achieve a smooth, creamy hummus. That is bullshit, okay? You don't have to do that. Nobody's got time for that. A lot of places will say you have to use canned chickpeas in order to get that smooth texture. But guess what? When you use canned chickpeas, your hummus tastes like a can, right? Other folks say that you have to soak your chickpeas overnight in either water or salted water or baking soda water, and that's the only way you can achieve a creamy hummus, and that's also completely untrue. If you've got a pressure cooker, you can cook your chickpeas from the dry state until they're ready to go in the blender in an hour or less. And if you're doing it on the stovetop, about 2 hours start to finish will get you where you need to go. But there are a couple of techniques and secrets that you definitely need to use, and I'm going to tell you those today. All right, so we are going to start with 1 cup of dried chickpeas available in pretty much any grocery store anywhere in the nation. Now here, I do have to say that there is one secret that will take your hummus absolutely through the roof. It will give you a texture that you just absolutely, completely won't believe if you taste it, and that is to use a special type of chickpea, or split-hulled chickpea, called Chana dal. Now you can find this in any Indian grocery store if you happen to live in a city that has an Indian or a Pakistani grocery store. You can also order them real easily and cheaply on Amazon. But for all intents and purposes today, we're just going to stick with regular grocery store chickpeas so that I can show you how exquisite your texture can be when you use them. Now we're going to combine this with 3 cups of water. Now measure this. Don't just dump your chickpeas in your water and eyeball it. We are going to use every last bit of that cooking liquid in the final hummus, so it is important that you measure. And if 1 cup of chickpeas doesn't sound like very much hummus, this is going to make you probably a full quart of hummus by the time we're done. So this is a fairly large recipe. I wouldn't recommend doubling it. Now you'll notice I'm putting these into my Instant Pot. I am a rabid fan of the Instant Pot. I don't work for them. I've never received anything free for them, but I do own 2 of them. I use them all the time. I've gifted probably 12 of these to people. I absolutely love it, even as a professional chef. It's one of my very favorite kitchen tools. If you don't have an Instant Pot, but you do have an old-fashioned stovetop pressure cooker, you can absolutely use those as well. And if you're going to use these in a pot, just make sure you cover your pot and simmer it. We are going to season these with about 2 teaspoons of kosher salt, and that should get enough saltiness in there to season our entire batch of hummus without the need to add additional salt. But we're going to make sure we taste it later on. And then the secret ingredient here is baking soda, sodium bicarbonate. Now you've probably ran across all sorts of interesting techniques for baking soda beyond just their use in baked goods. Baking soda is an alkalizing agent, meaning it counteracts acid and it raises the pH of the cooking environment to a higher alkaline level rather than a lower acidic level. Now, these chickpeas are bound up in their cell walls with a substance called pectin, which is found in virtually all plants and fruits and vegetables. And pectin takes its rigidity and toughness from the mineral calcium, which we have in our bones. That is why chickpeas are so notoriously hard, like other dried beans, and it's difficult to really get a creamy, smooth texture out of them. But if we cook the chickpeas in an alkaline environment, which the baking soda helps us with, what happens is the calcium inside the pectin of the cell walls decides it's going to freak out and get out of there. And instead, it's replaced with a sodium ion from the sodium bicarbonate. And this basically, you can sort of think of pectin as the walls of your house, basically transforms the walls of your house into jello. We are going to radically overcook these chickpeas far softer than they would be coming out of a can with the help of the pressure cooker and the baking soda to really basically turn them into mush. So, if you're using pressure cooker of any sort, you want to cook on high pressure for 45 minutes, then turn off your pressure cooker and give a 15-minute natural release. Stovetop, 2 hours at a low simmer covered, and then check your chickpeas to make sure that they crumble into mush when you squeeze them. While my chickpeas are cooking, I want to talk a little bit about the second important ingredient in hummus, and that is tahini. Tahini is a paste made from very finely ground sesame seeds. A proper tahini should only have sesame seeds as the ingredient, so make sure you read your ingredients. Be sure you're not getting tahini dressing or tahini with lemon. You just want pure sesame seed tahini. Now, tahini is becoming increasingly available in grocery stores across the country, but if you can't find it, check your local Indian or Middle Eastern market. If you can't find it there, order it on Amazon. Pretty easy to get a hold of tahini these days. Now, don't trust any recipe on the internet that says you can make hummus without tahini. All you're doing is making a paste of chickpeas when you do that. Tahini is a critical ingredient in hummus. Most recipes don't call for enough tahini, and tahini is actually that second secret. The way that we emulsify the tahini with the cooking water from the chickpeas is what's going to give us that ultra creamy, smooth texture. Now, when you open your tahini, you'll look on the beginning in the top, it just sort of looks like a liquid, right? Well, that's because it's a natural product and does not have any artificial emulsifiers in it. You always want to scrape down to the bottom of that jar as you're measuring out your tahini, because you're going to get some more kind of lumpy, thick tahini from the very bottom. And you want to make sure that the half cup of tahini that you measure out is a good selection of both the very, very bottom of the jar as well as the more liquidy stuff from the top. Now let's talk for a second about kitchen appliances, because these are the tools that allow us to get that ultra smooth texture. And you'll notice this is a Vitamix. This is a $400 blender, and I don't expect every household in America to have one of these. As a professional chef, it's an indispensable tool for me. But if you don't have a Vitamix, some of the lower grade high-powered blenders like the Ninja will do an exceptional job. The thing that makes the Vitamix so easy to use for hummus is that I've got this tamper which can let me kind of move everything around, make sure everything gets in contact with the blade. If you don't have a tamper like this or a dual blade tower like you get in the Ninja, it can be a little bit harder to make sure you get all of the chickpeas blended and in contact with that blade. So you'll have to do a lot of opening up and scraping down. But you can also achieve a near perfect hummus texture using just your average food processor from like Target or Walmart. So if you've got a food processor and then an old-fashioned sort of blender, go with your food processor because you're going to get a better product out of that. You're just going to have to make sure you run it a little bit longer to get that grade of smoothness that you're looking for. All right, it's been an hour. My chickpeas cooked at 45 minutes under high pressure with a 15-minute natural release. There's still a little bit of steam to release before I can open it. And it's perfectly okay to do that if you still have some steam built up, but the important thing is that you don't let this cool for so long that your ingredients are actually room temperature or cold. Now there is a very famous chef who's widely respected who says that the secret to truly perfect hummus is using chilled ingredients, but he is wrong. Try these recipes back to back and you'll see hot ingredients are really the key to getting that perfectly smooth emulsion. Now we're going to strain off our chickpeas from the cooking water first of all. And if you've used a pressure cooker, you're going to have quite a decent amount of cooking liquid left. Now this cooking liquid is actually something sort of magical, and it was only discovered recently that the liquid left over from cooking chickpeas and other legumes has so many dissolved proteins in it that it can actually be whipped into a fluffy matrix the same way that egg whites can. And this magical liquid has been given the modern name aquafaba, which is Latin for bean water. And there's all sorts of really wicked, interesting, fascinating things you can do with it. But that is really one of the crucial parts of this recipe. Now, I have not lost very much liquid, only about a cup to the chickpeas during this cooking process. If you happen to be making this recipe on your stove in a conventional pot, you're probably going to lose significantly more moisture to steam. All right? So if you find that you've got quite a bit less than 2 cups of liquid left over, go ahead and add enough water to make sure you've got 2 cups of liquid, and this liquid does need to be hot to proceed to the next step. All right? So we are going to put our tahini into the blender or food processor, followed by lemon juice. Now, 1 big fat conventional lemon will probably be enough for you, but I'm actually using Meyer lemons from my tree, and they have significantly less acidity than your traditional lemons. So I'm actually using a big Meyer lemon and a small Meyer lemon. You really do want to make sure your final hummus has a nice brightness to it, and that comes from the acidity. You can also use a little bit of vinegar if you have that. Vinegar is also pretty widely used in the Middle East and the Mediterranean to make hummus. And you may or may not need additional salt, but the first thing that we're going to do is blend it all together and taste it. Now, a lot of recipes also call for olive oil, and you do not need to use olive oil. It can actually complicate the texture of your hummus, all right? So save the olive oil if you want to serve the hummus with olive oil drizzled over the top of it. That's super traditional and delicious. All right, now we're adding our hot, very important aquafaba or bean cooking liquid to the blender. And since we are now going to be blending hot liquids, it is very important that you cover that blender with a kitchen towel to prevent any steam or hot water from splashing you in the face when you turn this on. You want to turn it on at the lowest speed possible, and if your blender doesn't have a particularly low speed, give yourself a few pulses first for that initial burst of steam to escape, all right? Okay. Now, our goal is to emulsify this tahini with our aquafaba, which is going to give us a slightly thick but perfectly uniform texture. That emulsion is the key to this whole recipe. You can turn up your power just a little bit. Let this go for a good 30 seconds. Now you can see we have a nice frothy texture, almost like a milkshake here. That's perfect. Now we add our hot chickpeas to the blender. And again, caution as you turn this on for the first time. Now you're going to increase the velocity of the blender slowly. You want to blend for about a full minute, and if you don't normally puree for that long in your blender, it's going to feel like an eternity, but you really do want to let it go. And in this ratio of liquid, your Vitamix or other blender is not really going to be struggling too much against it, because at this point it really is the texture of a fairly soft milkshake. Don't be alarmed by that either. That is definitely going to thicken up as we allow it to sit in the fridge. But you'll already notice as you remove the warm hummus from the blender that our texture is just creamy and perfectly smooth. There's no chunkiness, no coarseness, or anything like that. But at this point, we haven't yet gotten that indulgent, thick creaminess that we're going to get as this cools and those starches really kind of hold on to the emulsion. Now at this point, you want to give it a taste to check for seasoning. Oh, no, it's perfect. But it still needs to cool. So you want to cover with plastic wrap to prevent the top of it from drying out. Put it in your fridge for at least an hour. Now, like with many things of this sort, the hummus is going to taste better the day after it's made. So if you can make it a day early, absolutely do. But your texture is going to set and be absolutely perfect in about an hour. All right, I've let my hummus cool just a little bit. I'm going to show you the texture of this beautiful hummus on this little slate board here, so you can kind of get an idea of what our little tricks with the baking soda and the aquafaba have yielded. That is a perfectly smooth, creamy hummus. In fact, the texture is better than the commercially produced hummuses like Sabra that you can get at the grocery store. Just utterly creamy and smooth. And the longer that that sits in the fridge, the more it's going to set up and get a richer texture. I have, just for show and tell here, a hummus that I made several days ago using the Chana dal that I told you was the split and whole chickpeas that produce an even superior hummus, made according to the exact same recipe. And of course it's had a chance to set up for a few days, so it's a little bit sturdier in texture. But again, infinitely creamy. There's not a hint of coarseness in this hummus at all. So there you have it. You can make your own perfect hummus at home, and it's actually considerably cheaper than buying it in the grocery store. I did some calculations while the hummus was chilling. We used about $1.25 worth of tahini. Tahini is the most expensive ingredient you're going to buy. Costs about $10 for 2 pounds, and you're going to use about 1/8 of that container each time you make a batch of this hummus. We used about 50 cents worth of chickpeas, 50 cents worth of lemon, and the salt and baking soda and water all sort of come out in the wash. So we're looking at $2.25, and that yielded us 2 to 2.5 pounds of hummus. You're going to pay $5.50 or $6 for 1 pound and 1 ounce of Sabra in the grocery store. So it is 1/4 the price of buying commercially made hummus, and you made it from scratch yourself and know it's delicious and nutritious and wholesome for you and your family. So I hope you've enjoyed this little exploration with hummus. My name is Ben Starr. I am the Ultimate Food Geek, and I have just begun rehabilitating my YouTube channel after several years of being so busy at the restaurant I could not make any videos during that time. So if you like this, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, share it with your friends and family. There's a lot more coming your way. Thanks for watching.